to another turbocamaro.ca video. Today I'm just going to be going over part 2 of the intake and exhaust manifold fitment. You can remember before I went and painted these, and I've ground down on this area here and on the other side of the intake so that it would fit together. Now that I've had a chance to actually mock it up, I've realized there's quite a few other things that have to be done to make these work. So something you can save yourself a bit of time on by watching this. First thing is that the studs to mount the intake and the exhaust together were not coming out of the stock manifold. So this is the stock 250 manifold here. It's just got threads at the top and the long shoulder here. I couldn't get these out. Maybe somebody with different tools would be able to get these out, but not me. So you might have better luck than me, and that's fine. Either way, I went to the store and bought some new larger bolts, and I threaded them into the exhaust manifold here so that they would be nice, fresh, long threads. And then what I'm going to use is just these nuts and lock washers on the underside here of the intake, and that will hold it to the exhaust, and that should be just fine. The other thing is I couldn't seem to get the intake and the exhaust faces to be flush. They were, as much as I ground down on it, I couldn't get them to be so that they were perfectly flush together. As you can see here, with them up like this, if I go and touch these together here so that they're pretty much the same, and you slide along here, these aren't perfectly the same. And then you go even further, and now this one isn't quite the same. Now, as much as it looks really bad right now, technically they're already fixed. What I did to fix it, as you can see here, is I ground out these holes here and here, and on the underside of the exhaust manifold here. I ovaled them out so that I have some room to play back and forth, and that seemed to be just fine. It's fixed it, no big deal there. Lastly is where the actual bolts go into the head. You can see here's a sort of stock bolt. These are the ones that go in the middle of the manifold, so they go here, here, and here. And well, there's sort of just one of them over here with the bolt. Either way, they kind of go in like this, and that one's a bit sideways, and they sit just like that. The problem is with the exhaust manifold in the 292, at least in mine, the casting here is quite a bit thicker than that of the intake, and we're talking about like almost twice as thick. For an example, here's one that hasn't been adjusted yet. That was pretty close to flush there, and you can see there's like an extra step on the exhaust manifold, and there isn't one on the intake. So when you put this piece here that's supposed to kind of join them together and make them sit flush, it doesn't really work. So what you have to do, and if you're at the similar circumstance, is grind away the exhaust manifold so that they're the same thickness. And that's what I've done here. You can see that the material is a slightly different color. I used the grinder wheel on it just to bring it down, and then I used a Dremel to smooth it out. I did the same thing there and there, but I haven't done this one yet. So I'm going to go and do that now and get that ground flat. Now once you get that ground flat, this combination should be excellent. It should be a much higher power producing unit, and leave some options as far as being able to use a turbocharger without any flow issues. Lastly, this particular manifold, the 5416, it comes, if you get an old one, without an adapter. And this adapter that would sit on here is, you can get the Offenhauser one, or you can get one by Transadapt. There may be other brands, but the Transadapt, I think it's the 2090. It basically takes modern style carb bolt pattern, say for a Holley or Edelbrock, and it tapers it down into this particular older style 4-barrel carburetor platform, which is great. It's probably about a $40, that's $45 Canadian, that's probably $20 or something American, and it then gets you there. And then once you have that, you're going to see that the carburetor throttle linkage, at least on the Holley that I have, it's a Holley 4776, the linkage sweeps down here and touches the mating port, the middle mating port of the head, or of the intake, and that's going to be a problem. And it's about not quite by half an inch. It's super close. So what I've done is I've ordered the Transadapt adapter, and I've also got a half an inch plastic spacer. and I think it's the Flolic or whatever it's called, Fiolic, whatever it is, plastic spacer anyway. So I'll get a total lift of about 1 inch, and that will clear the throttle there, the throttle linkage on the intake, and I should be good to go. All right, so I received my adapter and my spacer. You can see here that the spacer is just black plastic, it's 1/2 inch. It's just a straight 4 Venturi, same size, no taper, and it goes to the larger size Holley carburetor pattern, or probably other carburetor pattern as well. This is the adapter. It came with the gasket, it came with the hardware, la-di-da-di-da. It's a piece of junk. I don't know if this is the right part. I've kind of looked online a little bit. I'm seeing some issues. For one, this is tapered, which is fine, but the taper is wrong. Like, I've rotated every which way. I've tried flipping it over. It doesn't matter. It doesn't work. So I'm not sure. I ordered the 2090, the Transtat 2090, and I get this thing. The holes, as you can see, to actually mount this adapter to the existing Offenhauser manifold are not drilled through. There's just no way to actually mount it without modifying it. Right out the gate, you have to drill holes in the thing, which is great. Not a big deal really if you have the right size drill bits, but kind of annoying. Also, if you can see here, they've kind of done a countersink on both sides. I'm not 100% sure why that's the case. One side at least, if not both sides, they might as well just left it a solid piece, because now when I use the provided screws here to go through this, I have to drill the hole, which is fine, but I've got a very thin piece of material here that's going to act as an actual surface for this bolt to sit on, so I have to be a little bit careful not to accidentally drill it out too far. The other thing of that is that it's going to mount like this, so that the studs are up, of course, and that these little press-in nuts that they gave me are the right way to hold this up, but then the head of the provided screw to go into the manifold is too big for the countersink that they've done. You can see here it doesn't even fit in the hole. So if once I do drill the hole, this won't actually go in all the way because it's going to sit with the head sitting above the actual adapter, which may actually work out because the plastic spacer I got just happens to have this sort of recess here. And that's coincidentally, there's a little like circular area there where I think that the bolt pattern for the Offenhauser manifold, if I drilled those out, it would actually probably fit perfectly. So it's possible that I can get away with this sitting on there, you know, something like that, with those nuts, those bolt heads sticking up, might actually work. I don't know if I want to do that. I think countersinking them would be ideal, but I might not need to, just by luck of this thing having a sort of a hollow space. The other thing I'd like to mention is that I mentioned earlier that the taper on the Offenhauser and the Holley were a bit different. They are a bit different, but it's not by as much as this thing makes it out to be. You can see here that that's a pretty significant taper. Like, it's not even like it's all the same in the middle, but then as it fans out, it's got this, you know, rise, or sort of a incline. And really what I want to see is it just slightly different, not so much. So again, I think I got the wrong part. I don't know if I'd necessarily blame Transtat for some kind of a total botch job, but I do think that these should have been drilled out, which, you know, if that was all it was, it wouldn't be a big deal. But since I'm drilling these out, maybe countersinking the holes again for their own hardware, and then also maybe changing the taper. That's, if this is the part it's supposed to be and it's supposed to fit like this, then they've got some serious manufacturing quality control problems. Either way, I'm going to fix the taper. I'm going to drill the holes. I may or may not, depending on how it fits with the spacer, countersink the bolts. If they were a hex head, then I would probably do it for sure, but since they're just round, I'm not sure it's going to matter. And I'd almost rather have the material for it to press down on than the little flap that they gave me in there. And then I'm going to go ahead and mount it all. I have test fitted already. I do know that with the spacer and the adapter and the carburetor and the gaskets, the throttle does clear the manifold, which at least there's something that's going good here. So I'll go do these things and we'll see how it turns out. You can see here it's all put together. So I had to change the way the venturis were tapered. I had to change the bolt holes in order to get them to work, and then of course I had to go and modify my gaskets so that they fit properly over this new adapter. So with the, I've got the manifold and then a gasket and then the adapter, and then I've got another gasket and then the spacer and then another gasket and then the carburetor. The spacer was fine, it required no modification, and then of course the carb there. Now the big, of course, question about this was, I did some pre-calculations, but you can see here with the carb hat on, this is the larger Spectre 4-inch one, not the low profile, and a little wing nut, not even a low profile. The hood does close. It closes, and I believe it's probably got about an inch or so of clearance. It actually clears the intake or the air filter just right. I mean, it may work out because of the fact that the hood has this sort of a hole here, or a gap, but it does clear that. Now, of course, that's not where that filter is going to end up with a turbo on it, but for now, that'll work as a kind of a cold air intake or semi-cold air intake. And that's it. So if you have any other questions about the manifold and carburetor fitting, feel free to let me know on turbocamaro.ca. And of course, if you like to follow these videos and you want to see how this all comes together, feel free to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Thank you.